It's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. Today I've got my main man, Max Keiser, back on the show with me. Max, how's quarantine life doing for you over there?
Yeah, it's great, Crypto Blood. If I knew quarantine was this great, I would have done it a lot sooner. It's get rid
No
of a lot
lie.
of useless activities like driving. I never liked driving,
Exactly.
etc.
Exactly.
Yeah, goes on from there.
Oh man, I'm telling you, man. I feel like I've been in a prison on a prison bed, man. It's been weird, but like you said, less driving, less nonsense trips to the store or whatever, man. You can't do any of that. So welcome back, and appreciate you coming back on. I hope you and Stacy are doing well over there. Why the song Iggy Pop "Lust for Life"?
Oh, I love that song. It's just got a great drive to it. I love that era. Iggy Pop is kind of like the godfather of punk, and he's from Detroit. Iggy Pop is a Detroit native.
I didn't know
and
that.
yeah, and his music it stands the test of time. It's still hard driving, fantastic.
That's what's up, man. So today, I wanted to talk to you about we're in unprecedented times, man, and I guess I want to kind of start with this whole coronavirus. What are your thoughts on it? I saw an article maybe about a week ago from Talib, the guy who created Black Swan, that book that really was popular, became really popular. And he said that this wasn't a black swan. I was pretty shocked that he said that this event, this coronavirus event, wasn't a black swan. And I looked into it a little bit further, and I actually see where he's coming from. Is this coronavirus a black swan event or not?
Well, Nassim Taleb, of course, he wrote The Black Swan. He also wrote a great book called Fooled by Randomness. And I guess what he's getting at there is that the coronavirus is not unpredictable, right? A black swan is unpredictable.
Right.
But this was completely predictable, given the way global supply chains operate, given the carelessness with which the Chinese wet markets are operating, and given lack of preparedness by various countries. And so this was predictable. So this is, I can see where he's coming from there. It's not an unpredictable black swan event.
Yeah, he called it a white swan. And I mean, I guess I can
I don't
see
care
that,
if you call it a black swan or a white swan. I think the lesson here is don't eat swans.
I like your white hole analogy you did the other day on RT. It made me think about that. But I guess when I was reading his response to that, he was kind of saying that essentially this is not the black swan, but there may be a black swan that comes out of this. What are your thoughts on that? Is do you see? Well, we can't really predict, but do you see a black swan coming out of this coronavirus event?
Well, you go back to World War I, right? And it was started by the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, and that was very unexpected at the time, and that was a black swan event. And then it quickly escalated, and initially it was thought to wouldn't cause huge trouble, but it did. It brought in many countries, and it was an untold human suffering as a result of what seemed to be a somewhat random event kind of triggered it. So in the COVID environment, the supply chain collapse and the market swoons and the economic impacts are not unpredictable. They are fairly predictable, but it may uncover something that we haven't really discounted yet for. Last week, apparently, the Pentagon released a video of actual UFO sightings.
Yeah, what was that about, man?
So, that would be a black swan event, in my opinion. That the aliens showed up. I think no one's really ready for that at this time. So,
I don't know, man. That seemed a little timely, to kind of throw us off of other things, maybe. I mean, it came out of the blue.
Well, there's an old trick in journalism to bury bad news on Fridays because nobody is really checking things out. So why not just release this news during a pandemic when no one's going to notice it? This way they fulfill their obligation to release the information that they have, but they know that it's not going to get the attention that it might have if there weren't a pandemic going on. the sightings of UFOs and this type of thing, it's always a fascinating topic. And but there are any number of chain reactions that could kick in as a result of the pandemic and sort of result in shocking developments. This is what happens during different centuries. They have century-defining events. World War I was the defining event, really, of that era. And we had, going back before that, the 1800s and the 1700s, you have different events that kind of mark the character of that century. And no one saw it coming at the time. I guess you could say that we haven't really seen yet what would be the unexpected development. It could be Bitcoin. Bitcoin adoption could suddenly skyrocket as a result of this pandemic and all the bank closures and the fear of fiat. And then suddenly we're on a Bitcoin standard, and then that would define the century, right? So the Bitcoin is really a huge outlying kind of phenomenon that could kick in a huge way and be a century-defining moment.
Let's talk about Bitcoin, man. You are the second coming of Bitcoin, Jesus 2.0.
I am the bishop of Bitcoin. I am Satoshi's representative here on Earth. I'm Satoshi's bishop.
Bishop Satoshi. Tell me, because listen, man, you've been in crypto way longer than me, but I've been in it for a while now, and the whole birth of Bitcoin was out of, financial crisis. We're gonna create our own financial system here for the people, and we never had that real test in Bitcoin as far as how it would react price-wise. I know price is not everything. It really isn't, because the functionality and tech behind Bitcoin is phenomenal. But we saw Bitcoin move in tandem with the stock market, with equities. It kind of lockstepped and had a positive correlation with those asset classes when we had the scare earlier this year start off with the coronavirus. What are your thoughts about that? And do you see that breaking at any point, that correlation breaking?
Look, anything has a positive correlation with anything over any period of time.
Right.
Over a short period of time.
Short
I can
period,
say
right.
that, you have to look back over 10 years. And then you can say that
There's
Bitcoin has no correlation with the stock market or anything else. It's up 9 million %. Doesn't correlate with anything. Right. On any given 6-month period or a 1-year chart, you can say, it correlates with this. It doesn't correlate with this. It's risk on. It's risk off. This is how people on Wall Street see things. They have to see things in terms of what they know, and they know things like correlation. They know things like stochastical, inconsistencies and converging and diverging. Technical analysis and this and that. A technical analyst will see Bitcoin through the lens of a technical analyst. A fundamental analyst will see it as a fundamentalist. Technologists will see it purely on the technology. Somebody who believes in UFOs will see it as aliens, presence of intelligent life from outer space. It depends where you come from. You show me where you come from, and I'll tell you what you think about Bitcoin.
With that, do you see? Because I'm in the camp, really, Max, of I see deflation happening first and then an hyperinflationary event because of all of the money printing that's going to come from central banks. What do you see coming first? Is it going to be a deflationary spiral, or do you see an hyperinflationary event just coming out of what we have here? Because if you look at it, a lot of the evidence, and I sent an article to you from Zero Hedge that talked about Deutsche Bank capitulating, and they're starting to charge negative interest rates for lower amount or deposit accounts of over 100,000. At first, it was just for like big accounts, corporate accounts, but now they're starting to hit people just above 100,000 new accounts. That seems like a deflationary event, because in a deflationary situation or environment, I would take a negative interest rate on my money if I know all other asset classes are dropping by even more than that. What is your response to that?
Well, since the early 1970s, we've really only had deflation. because since the early 1970s, we've only had debt money. So all fiat money is debt. Mm-hmm. All fiat money is issued with an interest attached to it. And that interest has to be paid. And the way that interest on debt money is paid is by issuing more debt money. And that's deflation. So we've had it in the U.S. budget deficit is up well over $1 trillion. The debt is approaching $24 trillion. The debt to GDP of the globe is 300% to GDP. The amount of bad assets on the Japanese central bank relative to GDP is over 100%. The United States will soon have over 100% of bad assets on their Federal Reserve balance sheet relative to GDP. You know, the Federal Reserve took in $8 trillion worth of bad debt so far this year. So they're going to match Japan. They're going to take in another 15 or $20 trillion of bad debt. That's all deflationary. And that all requires more issuance of more debt money. So it's a Ponzi scheme, right? So you can't taper a Ponzi scheme. The second that they stop issuing more debt money would be the end of the deflation, which would mean a economic, how would you describe it? Extinction event. The global economy would completely grind to an utter halt. And then from there, you have price gouging, which would be then called inflation. So the kind of inflation that's going to come after the deflation is price gouging. It won't be inflation in the sense of wages are going up. No, it's going to be more like a black market. You know, a black market is inflationary. The black market for chickens in a post-apocalyptic world is going to be, prices are going to be high. That's not necessarily inflation because it doesn't have anything to do with wages. It's just price gouging, monopolist pricing, oligopolization, mafia rule by mafia, fascism, these types of things. That's inflationary.
What would you do? What would you do if you were a millennial right now, looking forward, trying to figure out this future and secure some type of financial security here, man? What would you say to millennials out there going forward in this environment that we're in?
Well, to millennials, I'm very loath to give advice because I always think of myself as a student more than the master, because I'm always interested in learning more than, teaching. But since you asked me this question, I would say that every era looks equally bad to everybody all the time, and that every era has opportunity. So although this looks pretty bad for millennials, they have to take a step out of their pity pot, if you will, and understand that there's going to be some opportunities here. What those opportunities are exactly is hard for me to fathom because I'm 60 years old, and I don't really even relate to millennials that well. They're a different species of human being in many ways.
Well, so thank you.
There's just they've evolved. Evolution's happened since I was born in 1960. Humans have evolved. They've evolved significantly. So millennials come around.
For the worse, though, it seems.
It's not good or bad. Evolution's not good. It's not bad. It just is. It always favors the fittest, right? And those who those who survive, or I think it was Charles Darwin who said, it's not the strongest or the smartest that survive; it's the most adaptable. The ones who can adapt the greatest survive. So I don't know how a millennial adapts to this situation. I don't know.
I guess maybe get some feedback from you on like the job market for. As a baby boomer, I don't know. You're probably in a good situation and position, but I guess for the majority of individuals out there with this coronavirus and us having this lockdown, it really exposes to me a lot of things, Max. I think it exposes that first, a lot of jobs aren't going to be revamped. I think there's some structural damages that we're having with this lockdown. A lot of these jobs aren't coming back, in my opinion, Max. And then on top of that, you're going to have more companies start to have people work from home. And I'm hearing that companies that are doing this are starting to pay these individuals less because they are working from home. Like, structurally, I just see a change in the workforce, and I would just like to get kind of your intake on that.
Right. Well, I would say that cynicism is a luxury of old people. Young people don't have the luxury of cynicism, first of all. So it doesn't do you any good, to look at the glass half empty, right? There's always got to be something to do to kind of maximize what the situation is. There's always going to be opportunities out there. As far as the structure goes, the structural changes that are going on, people are working at home. The wages are definitely under attack, and you definitely have a drift toward, a panopticon of big trillion-dollar tech companies that are superseding all governments.
Yeah.
So if you look at that great film noir with Harrison Ford, where he plays a cop, Blade Runner. I was reading an essay about Blade Runner recently about how there's a total absence of government. They're just the Tyrell Corporation and a few other corporations. And I think that's what we're seeing now. What Amazon does is incredibly more significant than what the U.S. government does, what Nancy Pelosi does or Donald Trump does, in terms of shaping the environment, shaping industry, shaping wages, how people are going to work in the future. And when you add Google and Apple and these other companies and a few other international companies, right, they're calling the shots. It's their show. And so I think that we're seeing the transition away from the nation state, as it were, and we're going more solidly into the corporate state. But what to do in that kind of situation? I mean, I look at the Bitcoin space and the crypto space, and I do see some really great innovations and growth happening. I've been following that company Swan, which is looking really good. Casa Hodl, which we are involved with, that's really doing well. There's a company called Fold that just had a Keiser report. You're getting Bitcoin back with your purchases, which is really good. I think stacking sats and accumulating Bitcoin is probably the best thing anyone can do, particularly millennials. It's kind of the great equalizer in all of this, because I think that if you look at some folks and they're billionaires, it's mostly all fiat money, and that could be a huge problem. That could be a huge liability for them. And so, Bitcoin is money without a state. There's no state attached to it. It's unconfiscatable. You can transact with it. It's a store of value. So you can opt out of the chaos. And so stacking sats, definitely, even with a low paying gig job, you can still stack sats. I think there's roughly 100 Satoshis in a penny, right? So even a penny, you're buying 100 Satoshis, that could, that's meaningful going forward, because you still have this collapse going on of this debt money. And, Bitcoin is the only real solution, really.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and I'm banking on that to be the case as well, especially with the halving coming up in less than 15 days. Are you familiar with the stock to flow model? I'm sure you are. And what's your opinion about that? Because the stock to flow model, which suggests that Bitcoin will be 100,000 shortly after the halving. I don't know if you follow that model much.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And, it's a good way to compare it to gold and other assets. And, Bitcoin will stack up nicely against that. And you extrapolate that information and you come up with 100,000 per coin, et cetera. And that is certainly a valid way to look at it. The halving is very important, but, it's just one of a few of the major stacks in the Bitcoin stack. Right. So it's just one layer. The difficulty adjustment, that's an incredibly important piece of the protocol. The 10-minute time for issuance of new coins is a big and important part of the monetary policy of the protocol. So all of these things work together. I don't see any one of them. Like, I don't put the halving in a special place that's more
Gotcha.
significant than these other aspects. They all work together. The incentive model is all balanced perfectly. And the timing of it is exquisite. It's coming at a time when people are in a state of chaos, with politics in a state of chaos and finance in a state of chaos. So, adoption in Bitcoin is driven by chaos. People are they're gonna put off buying Bitcoin as long as they possibly can. It's something people don't want to do, really, because they're not familiar with it. But they will be forced to, and that's what drives adoption, is fiat failure. And people will defer that moment of truth as long as they possibly can, until they don't have a choice anymore. It's either buy Bitcoin or they won't survive. And this is what's happening.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask you this question, Max. What's the biggest threat to Bitcoin?
Right. The biggest threat to Bitcoin is that banks would suddenly start acting ethically, legally, morally.
Nah, that ain't gonna happen.
Right. And I can guarantee that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. If banks were just suddenly, if Jamie Dimon came tomorrow, made an announcement saying we are now going to start following the rule of the law. We're not going to break the law anymore. We're not going to create accounting scandals and illegal accounting tricks, and we're going to stop all of our accounting fraud. And we're going to stop stealing money from. If Wells Fargo came out and said we're going to stop stealing money from our customers, like all that happened suddenly, and I'd say, oh wow, this is bad for Bitcoin. But that's not going to happen. I can guarantee it's not going to happen, because these people are born. They're born, bad. There's a bad seed. That it's going to grow a bad outcome. Always results from a bad seed. So there's not any other outcome than bankers continuing to take us down this path, which is good for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I asked that question because and you actually tweeted this last night, about Andreas Antonopoulos' article out of Cointelegraph about his opinions about chain analysis. And they're basically, he said, an arms race against privacy. And so I feel like companies like Chainalysis is a direct threat to Bitcoin at the current point in time, until we see those protocols for privacy really be implemented on the chain. What are your thoughts about surveillance and the surveillance state? We know that they're taking advantage of this virus, this whole pandemic. They're trying to definitely kind of encroach on our privacy. What is your opinion about how this whole story is going to pan out with Bitcoin and privacy?
Right. Well, it shows that Bitcoin is a challenge to bankers, and we know that it will replace this current banking system. But based on what Andreas is talking about with chain analysis, we have to also understand that Bitcoin will mean and require us to replace all the current crop of politicians. Right. So in the old days, it used to say, "He who has the gold makes the rules." Now, in the new world, he who has the Bitcoin will make the rules. So the Bitcoin community will create its own governance systems and its own political systems. And, we'll have to get rid of Congress. We'll have to get rid of the senators. We'll have to get rid of politicians, because they are irredeemably corrupt. They trade on inside information all the time. And they're really just an impediment to democracy at this point. So they got to go.
And we know they're going to come out with their own coin, right? Their own crypto soon. Are you concerned with the majority? Because to me, I think the biggest threat is not educating the masses about what is real money and what is not. So do you see them coming out with their own coin, whatever they want to call it? I know they're working on FedNow, the new kind of ACH system that should be rolling out in 2024. Do you see that as an existential threat to Bitcoin and kind of like decentralized currencies, because at the end of the day, we need to get people that veil to lift. We need them to stop being brainwashed and just depending on the government for everything. So what type of environment do you see with a Fed coin and Bitcoin existing at the same time? What's going to happen in your opinion with that scenario?
Right. Well, the government coming out with a competitor to Bitcoin, that would be like Nancy Pelosi putting on a jersey with number 23 on it and saying, I'm Michael Jordan, and I'm just as good as Michael Jordan, and I'm the greatest basketball player that ever lived. Is that going to happen, Blood?
No. But hey, we got a lot of fans in the stadium that may be drinking that Kool-Aid, man.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't. But the second that the game begins, you're going to be sorry that you have Nancy Pelosi on your NBA All-Star team, right? She's not going to suddenly start doing like, dunking the ball and whatever,
Right.
It's not going to happen, So, I mean, I understand why they have coin envy. And I understand why Nancy Pelosi or Donald Trump would have coin envy, and they see Bitcoin as this thing, gosh, they wish they could be like that. I'm going to go and do my own coin, right? I mean, we saw the same thing with Roger Ver and Bitcoin Cash, right? He was like, I'm going to make my own Bitcoin. That's going to be even greater than Bitcoin. And it flamed out. It's a piece of garbage, and his reputation went to shit. Same thing with Craig Wright. Same thing with just about every other altcoin out there. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to be the next Bitcoin. This is going to be better than Bitcoin, right? I mean, they should all be called
coins, though,
Nancy Pelosi coin.
Do you think the privacy coins have any space or position in this new age?
Look, all of the coins, came out of that 2014 period where there was this issue of is Bitcoin or can Bitcoin scale? And so all these coins came out. Different coins, and since that time, Bitcoin is scaling nicely. It's scaling beautifully, and all the fungibility and privacy features will end up on Bitcoin at one point or another. And so I don't see any other coin ever going to touch anything, remotely close. So they were all interesting test nets. I mean, Litecoin was a test net for SegWit. Okay, thank you very much. And some of these other coins are test nets for features. But any feature that's going to make any coin worth anything is just going to end up on Bitcoin anyway. So that they're not really, it's like Wilt Chamberlain playing Tribe of Pygmies.
No, I hear you. So one last thing I want to talk about before I got like 3 questions from some of my premium YouTube members. They have some questions for you, but. Bloomberg, Trump weighs China stock ban for $50 billion in federal savings. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm just sitting back watching this whole Corona thing, and the rhetoric is starting to really heat up between the United States and China. Right? I've never seen it be this way, man. It seems like we're heading. Do you think we're heading toward that kinetic war event or something else? Is it going to be a monetary war? What it's happening? I see it's like a slow train crash, right? What do you think is going to happen between the United States and China? I think personally it's a good thing that we're starting to kind of, push back to them, and other countries are as well. So what from a geopolitical standpoint, what is going on with China and the United States, and basically China versus the world now?
Yeah. Well, let me so I understand the how this is being framed here. So the current thinking, as I understand it, coming out of the Trump administration, is that China and the coronavirus, which allegedly began in Wuhan, this information was not communicated or wasn't distributed in a way that caused some damage. And so Trump, if I understand what he's saying, is saying, we want to be compensated for that, or there needs to be a price to be paid for that. Is that kind of the frame that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean that's maybe not for Trump, but there are certain states in the United States that that's looking to sue. I think there are some lawsuits out of Florida. There's some in some other states. Yeah.
Well. First of all, before we sue China for reparations, I'd rather see the black community get reparations in America first for slavery. And let's do that one first, and then we'll visit the China one later. But having said that, here's my comment on this. All right, we are Americans, right? Mm-hmm. And every year we pay something called tax to the IRS, and we pay trillions of dollars in taxes. And last year and every year for going back many years, half of those taxes go to the Pentagon, and all the intelligence services, which include the CIA, the NSA, FBI, et cetera, police. And so the fact is, where was the CIA in all of this? In other words, we pay them to spy on China.
Exactly. I don't understand.
And we pay them to control the world. We pay them to overthrow governments, as they do frequently. We pay them to start wars. We pay them to do dirty wars. We pay them to send in hit teams and hit squads. And that's what we pay for. That's what I'm paying my money for, to do your job as a spy, right?
Yeah, we pay all these billions, and when we need them the most.
Right. So now in January, when the coronavirus hit, and all that information, you can find it easily on YouTube of people in China dropping dead.
Exactly. I was talking about this in January, Matt.
Approximation, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, all that information was out there, and that time to address this pandemic was at that time. And countries that acted quickly, they're in a much different place than the U.S., which acted very slowly. So I think that's the bigger issue. So I think by saying, hey, we're going to go sue China, that's like, look in the mirror, dude. How come our own intelligence agencies left us, out to dry? How come it's like the Katrina disaster all over again? Everyone's holed up in their house and starving to death potentially, and where the government's out there trading stock tips, jerking off to porn on the internet, doing everything that we know that they do, right? That's the problem. The problem is we don't have, we're wasting money on these fools. So we should go on a tax strike. If in fact people are going to sue China, they should. It would be much more effective to simply they just not stop paying taxes immediately. If every American today said, "Fuck you, fuck taxes," and we had solidarity like the founding fathers did against the English during the Boston Tea Party, which was a tax revolt, we'd be getting somewhere. But no. They like to play us for jackasses and bandy about the racism thing. It's going to be China's less than human. China's, it's all that racism. They did it during the Russiagate hoax. It turned out that was a giant hoax.
Yeah.
The Russiagate hoax. That was all put out by cable news as race baiting nonsense, right? And now they're doing it with China.
Absolutely.
Okay, these people got to be out of office. The only way to do it is with Bitcoin. Passive resistance, build your own country.
I just don't understand how the CDC, it needs to be, they're one of the biggest mess ups in this whole situation, Test kits they could have had out, I don't like the WHO, but the WHO said, hey, we got test kits. They're like, oh, no, we're going to make our own. They're going to be complicated and have gold plate tips and all this stuff, and it ended up not even working.
They're on their third or fourth program, multi-$100 billion program to give banks who then give it to some of their clients. But they didn't receive any. But they haven't made any masks.
Well, Crypto Blood is making masks, and we're selling out of them.
Just make some masks. The IRS has my address. Why don't they send me a mask for 20 cents? I give them millions and millions of dollars. Over the past 40 years. I've given those assholes millions of dollars. And here we have a corona epidemic. They can't send me an 80-cent mask?
No, they're all made in China.
What's that all about?
They're all made in China.
What do you mean it's made in China? The CIA's in China. Go get them.
So
right? That's our supply chain. What's the point of having a global empire if you don't use it? Right? America, the empire, that's a joke. And, you know, this has exposed America as...
It has. It really has, man.
You know, it's a joke, man.
So, I mean, that's kind of to my question earlier about this relationship between the United States and China. You said there's always a silver lining in things, and I agree. And I think in this case, Max, the silver lining for us as Americans is that I think many of us have finally realized how reliant we are on China, whether it be for medications to, you know, manufacturing any and everything, even food. Even some of our food supply chain is coming through China and has been disrupted. So is that a silver lining for us to say, hey, we're going to bring everything or a lot of things back home? And if we do that, what are the ramifications of us bringing a lot of our manufacturing back home? Wouldn't that increase the price of goods domestically?
Yeah, let's look at it in the following context. So during the period when all jobs were being outsourced to China, the cost of stuff at the store got cheaper. Mm-hmm. So the average person in America, even though they lost their high-paying job and they got a lower-paying job, the cost of stuff at Walmart went down more than the rate at which they were losing their wages. So they felt like, you know what, I don't care because I got a flat screen TV, I got 2 cars, I got a house, and that's all made possible because my job was outsourced to China. Okay, now let's reverse the equation. China is no longer supplying us with stuff. We're making it domestically. The price of that stuff is going to go up, but the wages domestically will go up at a faster clip. Our wages, that's real inflation. Mm-hmm. So the wages go up faster than the prices of the stuff at the store, right? So that's real. That's what we want. We want purchasing power. We want a currency that doesn't continuously get destroyed by the knuckleheads in Washington. We want real currency. We want real money. We want real jobs. Okay, so that's if you look at it in that context, there's nothing to fear. We have nothing to fear. There's nothing wrong with America, run by Americans. Right. It's when you have Americans run by foreign bankers, then you have a bad situation, a sorry state of affairs like we have now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to play this clip right now from CNBC. You guys will see it. From a guy I knew of him, but man, I really started to like him after I heard him on CNBC. Chamath Palihapitiya. He really put it down, man. Like he was just like, you need to get him on your channel because I think he's somewhat of a woke individual. As far as these stock buybacks and dividends, he essentially said that we're giving the money to the wrong people. Why are we bailing out the people that live in the Hamptons and, you know, have mega yachts and all of this stuff? We need to stop the whole stock buyback thing and allowing them to do that. What are your thoughts about stock buybacks and especially in the case with Boeing, right? Boeing is a perfect case. A lot of the airlines, perfect cases where they spent over the last 10 years billions of dollars on buybacks, and now they want us to bail them out. Are we finally waking up, and is Chamath one of the things that Wall Street needs to hear?
Right. No, I know the clip. I saw the clip, and there was a moment of clarity on news there, but there won't be any follow up to it. You know, Apple Computer just announced some $50 billion stock repurchase, stock buyback.
I saw that.
So for maybe 3 or 4 days, people are like, oh, boo-hoo, we have to stop all this buybacks, right? Buybacks up until just 20 years ago or so were illegal for obvious reasons. It's manipulation. And so it was only made possible to give companies a way to fabricate earnings that don't exist, right? I mean, if you take away stock buybacks, earnings for the S&P 500 are reduced dramatically, and therefore the price earnings multiple would be much higher, and therefore the stock market would be a lot lower. But, this is all about taking the entire economy private as part of the casino gulag model that I've talked about for many years. It's interesting that people are now sheltered at home behind plexiglass walls. That's the gulag part. And they're on the internet trying to play games and click on ads to win a protein pill. That's the casino. So that's been coming for years now. And I see that now really coming to pass. It's coming into view. But as far as the comments that were made on CNBC and the discussion that followed for a day or two, it makes people feel good, like they're having this conversation, but it won't change anything. It can't change anything because you can't taper a Ponzi scheme, right? You can't, to suddenly stop stock buybacks. And by the way, they will continue, it's guaranteed, but they might be called something different. They'll rename them, they'll rechristen them. They won't call them stock buybacks, just like green mailers and hostile raiders of the 1980s became activist investors, in the 2020s. Every financial scam on Wall Street is always every 10 or 15 years repackaged and called something else, but it's always the same scam. There's only 3 or 4 scams you can do. So they have to keep changing the name so that people fall for them again and again and again. So stock buybacks will not go anywhere. They will be accelerated. They have to be accelerated, or the stock market will go down and people will demand that it goes up again, right? So that's not going to change. But for a couple of days, people, it was virtue signaling, right? So CNBC and this guy were virtue signaling for a day or two, like, I have virtues. This is what the truth is, and they're like, oh, that's so great. You're right, oh yeah, and then they forgot about it. It will be completely forgotten about. Remember Dylan Ratigan on for a year or so, he was ringing the alarm, the market's crooked, businessmen are crooked, we need to get right. And everyone was like, you're so correct, and I feel better listening to you. But then they booted him off the air.
Yeah, I don't see
he's
him
off the
anymore.
air. He got fired.
That's what I thought.
He got fired, right? Because they don't want to know the truth. They don't want to. They don't want it. The reality sucks, man. Who wants to know the truth when you're having? It's like the Matrix. This steak, I know it's fake, but it tastes really good, right? So it's like, I know these earnings are fake, but Apple stock keeps going higher. That feels really good, right? So they're not going to. The Matrix is the Matrix. They're not going to change. It's not going to change it. It gets back to the question about a black swan. There would have to be a sudden structural shift that money printing couldn't ameliorate, right? So even though the pandemic seemed pretty significant, it looks like they're going to print enough money to paper it over for the class of individuals for whom this is beneficial. So the question is, what disaster would be big enough that you couldn't paper over? So a meteor strike, I think, would qualify. If Earth was struck by a meteor, I don't think you could paper over. I don't think you could do enough quantitative easing to solve that problem. The pandemic, we now know, can be papered over, it appears. So that's not a big enough disaster.
Well, as of now, but what if it continues on? What if there's
They have another 50 to 100 trillion room to print. Wow. They've already said they're ready to print 100 trillion.
Infinity,
100 trillion, or QE to infinity. So I don't think this is big enough to stop the printers. I don't think the bailouts are going to stop anytime soon. So pandemic didn't do it. So maybe if there was, one of an ice shelf snapped off one of the poles and ocean, levels went up a foot in a day or something like that, that might be more than they could paper over. World war, a shooting war, a kinetic war, an atomic bomb or something like that. That could be a problem. That might be more than you could paper over with some quantitative easing, perhaps.
I'm concerned about our relationship with China. I'm gonna be honest with you. It seems like it's just is escalating every week. It's like Trump comes out with another subliminal punchline, and then Xi comes back, and it's just, I don't know, man. I just think I see this thing really escalating. I don't know if it gets to a kinetic war level, but I just see this thing really, really escalating.
Oh, okay. Well, if China is serious about getting into a tussle with the United States, they can very simply just adopt a gold-backed currency. put the dollar out of business. But they don't, because
that would restrain them, though.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
The two are symbiotically connected. China and America. They can't get out of each other's way. If China was serious, they would do a gold-backed currency. They would do a crypto gold-backed currency, kill the dollar, and take over the world. But they don't want to do that, because then, that's a lot of responsibility. I mean, China wants to be competitive. They want to be strong, but do they really want to be the role of the world's cop? Like America is the world's cop. We go all over the world and tell people, don't do this, do this. You need a new dictator. You need a new president, right? It's a tough job. It's tiring. Look at America's obviously.
I mean, one belt, one road. They look like they were on their way to try to do that with a lot of countries over in the East. But I don't know. I think that's all put on hold.
What are they doing? I mean, in Africa, for example, they're doing deals. They do infrastructure deals. They build railways. They build schools. They do stuff, right? They don't kill people. America's greeting card is, "Hi, we're from America. I'm going to kill you." Right? That's how they say hello. That's how they say hello to people around the world. "Hi, you're dead." China's like, "Hi, here's a new school. Hi, here's a new railway. Oh, hi, here's a new hydro power plant." Right? That's how they greet.
But you got to install my 5G so I can spy on you, though, right?
Well, how come the U.S. doesn't have 5G?
I know,
because they wasted all the money.
Exposing us,
you can't say, "Oh, China built 5G and it's bad." It's like they won the 5G race.
Yeah.
So it's like in America, right? Everyone gets a gold star. All the telephone companies that lost the 5G race, we're going to give them a gold star anyway, a pat on the head, and say, "You're a good boy. You tried. That's what happened. That's the only thing that matters." And but they lost. They lost the 5G race.
Interesting. So let me get to the questions. I've got only three, and then we'll wrap up here, Max. The first one is from James H. He said the CFTC chair said in recent tweets, because the spot price had approached zero or even negative in the cash markets recently, the possibility of negative WTI crude futures prices was something exchanges and many traders had prepared for. He said, what prepared for, like large commercial short positions, reminds me of the silver market, yet oil is recognized by everyone. He's asking, does oil's activity help expose the fraudulent paper market? That was an epic time, man. 420 was.
There's a few things going on. So, like this ETF out there called USO.
Yeah.
Right. So it's oil, and they trade futures. And recently in the futures markets, you had a negative print for the price of oil, which never happened before, and it's a failure. It's market failure. I mean, anyone that would argue that it's somehow in keeping with a prudent or sound market is incorrect. This is market failure. But let's take a step back for a second. This USO ETF is still operating. It's huge. And the price discovery involved in that is patently and demonstrably fake and fraudulent, and the people behind it are crooks. Okay, that is indisputable. Now let's go over and ask these regulators like the SEC and the CFTC, how come there's no Bitcoin ETF? Oh, because there's no price transparency. It's opaque. We're not sure how they make a market, right? They come up with this litany of excuses. Now, every single one of their excuses about the Bitcoin ETF are easily dismissed, shot down, discredited. They're false. And yet, at the same time, every single piece of the USO oil ETF that they allow is obviously and demonstrably fraudulent.
Yeah, they're not even buying oil anymore, right?
This means without now we know for a fact. One thing we know for a fact is that the SEC, CFTC are captured regulators. They're corrupt. They're in the pockets of the industry, and that's why they don't approve a Bitcoin ETF. Not for any reason that they give. That anything that comes out of their mouth, is is a lie. So that we know for a fact now without dispute. As far as the mechanics of how these ETFs works with the oil pricing and the futures trading and negative prints on the negative price of oil, this is market failure, and it's the result of artificially cheap money that's allowed for inventories to skyrocket, even though it's not economically viable to do so. The only place we've seen an economy this messed up is the Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, you would have, let's say, a negative price for a tractor. At the Politburo would say we need more tractors, right? So here we have a negative price on oil, and the Politburo in Washington D.C. is saying we need more oil, right?
Let's stack up our reserves, right?
It's total Soviet Union.
It's crazy.
It's like America is becoming the Soviet Union, and meanwhile the Soviet Union collapsed, became Russia, and Russia's becoming more like America. It's like Vladimir Putin is like Eisenhower of the 1950s. He's building out the country like Eisenhower did, former general, became president. So President Putin is like General and President Eisenhower. Then you have the current administration of Washington. Trump would be like Khrushchev or someone, a Soviet Union era leader who's pounding their shoe on the table like Khrushchev did during the Bay of Pigs scandal. And, saying we need more oil. Like, it doesn't matter that it's a stupid idea. We just need more because more is more.
Yeah. Let me get to this other question. GNTHR asks, can governments regulate Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies and or make them illegal?
No. I mean, well, the thing is they could, but no one would listen to them. And, the Bitcoin community is developing a fifth column, right? This is our sources inside regulators. We're working to flip them and turn them into Bitcoiners because they're all paid in fiat money. And when the fiat money collapses, they don't want.
There's no incentive,
money.
Right?
They want Bitcoin. It's just like the fall of the Roman Empire. When the Rome couldn't pay the army anymore because the silver denarius was clipped into oblivion, they let the Vandals in. They let the barbarians in. They're like, there's no money, forget it. So you can't pay regulators with fiat money forever. They're going to be like, nah, we'll take Bitcoin. We'll stack Satoshis. Good luck with your fiat.
Last question, Trader Jane. She said, we want to know why Max and Stacy picked RT as their platform. You know what? It's funny because you put a tweet out this morning kind of talking about this, and she asked this a couple of days ago. So I don't know if someone asked you about this or what, but your tweet says here, why we are on RT. Said we pitched Keiser to many networks, BBC, CNN, etc. The only one that would not censor us was RT. Wow.
Yeah. RT is the only network that doesn't censor us. And we've worked on BBC, France 24, Al Jazeera English, and a bunch of other networks around the world.
I'm surprised Al Jazeera didn't. They seem pretty...
at first they were good, but then after a couple of years, they became more beholden to Riyadh. And they were no longer the press freedom was no longer enjoyed there as it once was.
What do you think about platforms, decentralized video platforms like Library, and there are a number, BitChute and all those? Do you think those are going to be more popular in the future?
Sure. Well, my friend Brian Rose at London Real in London.
Yeah, he got censored up, man.
Right, but he's launching the Digital Freedom Network.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that part.
He did a crowdfund. He's raising in less than 2 weeks. I think he raised over $1 million. And so he's going to build his own network.
Nice.
And so you can't censor it. And he's going to build an app. And he's coming on Keiser Report in another week or so. I'll be on London Real.
Sweet.
As well. But so there's a guy. He's a relatively young guy. I don't know if he's a millennial, but he's been hit with this massive reality check.
Yep.
And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to build my own network. I'll do a crowdfund, raise $1 million, build my own network. Right. So there's opportunity from chaos. There's a lesson in that, Blood.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Thank you, Max Keiser, again, host of the Keiser Report on RT America. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe, and click that bell. We're going to rock out to this song he requested. What is it called again? Iggy Pop?
This is
I'm
Iggy Pop,
familiar, man.
Lust for Life.
That's
You
some old
gotta
school
learn yourself
stuff,
some
man.
white music.
Yeah, I got to learn myself. We're out of here, people. Holla!